Yo, what's going on, you guys? Your boy Devon Terrell in raw form, and welcome to another Help Me Devon raw tutorial. And today, in this Help Me Devon raw tutorial, I'll be showing you how I like to mix little baby type vocals in any DAW. Now, at any time during this tutorial, if you want to follow along with me, I'm going to leave a link in the description below for this actual template that you can download at helpmedevon.info. Just pick your DAW down below in the description, and you'll find the small child vocal chain, which is this exact thing that's inspired by Little Baby, and you can follow right along with me. Let's get right to it. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm gonna play the song. I'm gonna play you the vocal that I created with using the small child vocal chain, and then I'll walk you through exactly how I got to this place. So listen close.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, try to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
Okay, real short, real sweet. It's a Little Baby type vocal. So how did I get to this vocal? If you're following along with me in this actual small child vocal chain, then it'll be a lot easier for you to see it, dissect it, and figure out how to even make it your own. But I'm going to show you exactly how I got to this place. Check this out. Okay, so first thing first, what I always like to do is I like to throw in an NLS channel. For you guys that frequent this channel, you know that I use the NLS channel a lot. All it is for newcomers, that people are not familiar with the channel, I use this for analog saturation. It gives you the sound of a board, quote unquote. Obviously, this is a digital plugin. It's an emulation analog plugin. Don't get too tied up on that. But I use this just to give me that at the very top of all my signals. So I have that put right there. Okay. Next thing I use, of course, is an auto-tune plugin. Now, what I've noticed with Lil Baby vocals is that when it comes to his auto-tune, it's pretty heavy and it's pretty apparent with certain songs that he used. So literally, these are my settings. I literally have it cranked all the way to 0, and everything else is basically at its nominal place. I've learned that putting it at the low male helps a lot. It sounds a little bit better to me, but that can vary per vocal. This is a preference. I'm telling you, don't think too hard. Just pay attention really to that retune speed. I've noticed that when I had it to 0, it felt pretty similar to his. It may be a little further back, but 0 felt pretty great. Just keep that in mind. Okay, next thing that I did was, let's get to some EQ. So once again, I usually have a very a standard approach when it comes to these things. I always correct my problems first. So I always fix the problems. And the reason why I fix problems in the vocal before I start compressing, before I start adding anything like that, is because I don't want to boost any of that bad stuff before it starts to get jarring to your ear or it starts to build. So I like to do cuts. I like to take things out before I add those compressors, because once I add that compressor, it's going to bring all that stuff out even more. So of course, this is why I do subtractive EQing, as you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I'm going to remove all of these plugins, my effects, etc. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you this, and I'm going to bypass it back and forth to give you an idea of what it sounds like. So without first.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, try to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So the reason I'm doing all this subtractive EQing is because I know when I go to my next steps, as far as compression and things like that, I know I'm going to run into some serious issues. So I'm really careful with that when I'm actually pulling this stuff off. So I'm taking out things so that later on when I start boosting, they are not there as much, and I have that choice. Got it? Okay, good. So the next thing I did was I added a Renaissance de-esser. I added a de-esser. And the reason why I added a de-esser once again is because obviously like I said before, I'm trying to attack the problem frequencies. And that 3 kilohertz frequency range is one that gets in the way a lot for me personally. So that's exactly what I did. So check this out before and after.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, try to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So when I recorded the vocal, I heard it back and I said to myself, okay, this little section right here is poking out a little too much. And if I can get that one little section frequency-wise under control, I think that the vocal will just sound a lot more concise. So this is what I did. when I'm telling you guys, a de-esser is such a powerful tool to really iron out or fix little things inside of your vocal mix, whatever you're using. It's super powerful. So I saw within my vocals that there was a little issue, or it was just a little too much poking out at that 4 kilohertz range. And I popped that and put a de-esser on it. And the de-esser is now smacking that down when it crosses the threshold. So that's all I did, as you can see right here with this Renaissance de-esser. So I just attacked problems. That was it. Okay. Next thing that I went and did was I'm boosting now with my compression. So I move right on over here. I have a 4-to-1 ratio. And basically I did a fast attack and a medium, I did a medium attack and a fast release. So check this out what I did. And usually, like I tell you guys all the time from previous tutorials, is my first compressor is usually the one that I use to get the volume out of the vocal. Because a lot of times you'll get a master beat. And I know you say to yourself, yo, I have to really record it loud. No, you don't. Just record it at a great level. I like negative 10 dB. And then find a compressor that you pull over to really get the volume out of it with controlling your peaks, as well as bringing up some of those quiet parts. And there, you don't have to record so hot. So check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, found out they were selling bricks.
Okay, so you hear a lot of the clarity comes out. The body of the vocal is coming out that we thinned it out before. And that's all because of the compression. Now, the beautiful thing what the compression did was it brought back some of that body, and it also boosted a lot of the good stuff. Why? Because we took out so much of the bad stuff that we didn't want. Not necessarily it's not bad, but it's something that we didn't want in the vocal. And now that we tamed it and took some of that stuff out, when it boosted everything up with the compression, you had more of the good stuff that you did want tonal wise out of the vocal, as opposed to those things that I promise the compressor would have been taking that 3 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz stuff, and it would have been super loud, and it kind of would have bothered you. And you would have said to yourself, well, I like parts of this. That's exactly why I do it like this. Fix and then boost. Fix, then boost. Okay, so we're moving right along. So like I said, I had a medium attack on this just to control those transients just a bit, and I had a fast attack so it can let go of those transients so it still felt like it moved. And I'm doing this in comparison to Little Baby's vocals just to get it as similar as possible when I did this. Okay. Next thing I did was I moved on over to an RVox, and usually what I use this RVox for is just to get a little bit more of that face vocal in your face. I feel like that's very popular in modern day hip hop, so I always pull the RVox out when I'm looking for just a little bit more. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, found out they were selling bricks.
When I engage that RVox, I just feel like the vocal is hanging on my ear a lot stronger. Like it's literally riding right on my ear. It just helps me get that vocal to pop just a little bit more forward in the mix. Check this out when I use it within the mix itself. Without first, and I'll keep bypassing back and forth with the RVox. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, found out they were selling bricks.
So like I said, it just gave me a little more without actually boosting the volume too much of the vocal. It just gave me a little bit more, made those low mids in the vocal kind of pop out a little bit more and gave me a little bit more presence. So I use this compressor just to give me a little bit more presence when it comes to that vocal. Cool. Okay, next thing I used is my R compressor, which is probably my favorite compressor. What I do in this third stage of compression, because realize I just did about 3 stages of compression, 4 if you want to count the de-esser. In this stage of my compression, this is the compressor that I like to call the glue. And the reason why I call it the glue is because this is the compressor that I'm going to use to set my attack and release times to fit within the actual beat of the music, because that's what you're trying to accomplish with the compression. Not only are you trying to make your song louder, and what you're really trying to do is you're trying to make that vocal sit in a place timing wise that it feels like it's pumping, not pumping, quote unquote, hearing pumping, but that is compressing within the beat's time and within the way of how the kick and the snare hits. It's a really big deal. You have to really train your ears for this, but I'm going to show you how I get to this place and how you can kind of train yourself to learn it this way. Okay, so I'm gonna solo this out first. And first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let you hear this by itself. I'm gonna bypass it back and forth. I'm gonna let you hear it not in context of the music, and then I'll let you hear it in context of the music. So I'm gonna bypass back and forth so you can hear what it's actually doing, and then we'll go forward with that. So without first, listen close.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So you can see that I put a pretty fast attack on it and a medium release, meaning what felt right in the beat was a vocal that pretty much those transients were very controlled, and then it's pretty much even holding on to the transients just a little bit to fit within that beat. So check this out. Let's listen to it in context with the music. Listen close. I'll bypass back and forth.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
Okay, when you listen to this, and this is a great example, you really got to listen to the relationship between the vocal and the snare. It kind of feels like the vocal and the snare hit at the same kind of power. Like it just feels like the vocals hit with the snare and they kind of live together. Listen to the relationship between the snare and the vocal. Listen close.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So that is my glue. That was the best settings that I found to myself personally, that I said right there is where I feel like the vocal and the music is actually glued together and living in a better place. Now, what I'll do is I'll release some of that compression as far as the attack is concerned, and I'll mess with the sliders so you can get an idea of what it sounds like when you manipulate it a little bit. So let's say, for instance, we slow down the attack. What does that sound like? Well, listen close.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So you can hear as I move to the right, you feel like a door is opening on the vocal, like the vocal starts to open up a little bit more. There's a point where at the 8, at that very middle where it still sounds like it could be good. You could leave it there. But when you start to move far to the right, it feels like it starts to disconnect from the actual music. And this is how you do this. Take your slider, slide until it feels right. That's it. So check this out. Watch this.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
Okay, so it's a faster attack. It feels better on the faster side as opposed to the slower side. And it's because those transients are a little bit more controlled and it starts to kind of glue in with the beat a little bit more as far as those snare hits are concerned. So that's how I did that. Now, let's take a look at the release time. I'm going to take the release, and remember the release, all it's doing is asking you, how long do you want me to hold this physical compression when it engages? So I'm going to start to move it to the right just to give you an idea of what it sounds like. So when I move it to the right, I am slowing the release down, meaning I'm holding it longer. So check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers.
Okay, so you can automatically hear it feels tighter, and that's because it's holding the compression. So remember, when you slow down the release, you're making the vocal or audio signal sound tighter. Now, when I move it to the left, in this particular compressor, it's going to be a faster release, and a faster release is going to make the vocal sound a lot more loose. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So you see, when you mess with the release and you kind of make it faster, it starts to kind of dance in the beat, and that's how I start to pick and choose where I let it lay. So check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contact for the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So even right there, I feel like in that 65, that mid to fast release, it feels better. It starts to open up my, oh, this is a nice spot where the vocals kind of riding and it feels dope. So that's how I would suggest for you guys to use your glue compressor, is just basically take those sliders, see where it feels right. And that's how I always say, and I always tell you guys, You can listen to something a million times, but ask yourself, how does this feel? Does this feel better? That's what I always say to go with. You can use your ears, but sometimes your ears can deceive you. But one thing that doesn't deceive you is your feeling and your gut. So I always go with, how does it feel? Does this feel better? And that's how I just kind of go about deciding that type of thing. All right, so let's put this back. And let's go over here. So next thing that I do is I use the Fab Filter Satin. And I do something really simple with the Fab Filter Satin. Long story short, this is an analog saturation plugin emulation. And all I'm going to do is when I listen to Little Baby's vocal, I noticed that it was pretty bright. So I went on over to my analog saturator, which is the Fab Filter, to really get some brightness without it being too scratchy or jarring to the ear or sounding unprofessional in a sense of, you could tell when someone just grabs an EQ and just cranks it. It just does it a little bit different. When it comes to analog saturation, remember, there is a slight bit of compression, color, extra added harmonics. There's all these nuanced things that happen. So it's really dope to have analog saturation plugins to really give you a difference as opposed to just grabbing an EQ and doing the same exact thing. Check out what this thing did. So I'm going to solo this by itself. Listen close. I'm going to bypass back and forth.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So I know what you're saying, bro. It needs to take that high end out. It needs to be de-essed. I hear you. I totally hear you. What a lot of these engineers and mix engineers are doing these days is they're boosting this high end and then they're de-essing it and kind of combating that. I'll explain later. But for now, just focus on this. I am very aware that that is extremely bright, that is bright and it's ripping. But boy, let's be honest. When it comes on, does your ear gravitate right to that brightness? I tell you what, I'll play it within the music, bypassing it back and forth. You be the judge. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So that thing cuts right through that mix. It's not much competition with it. It's literally probably the brightest thing in my mix. Therefore, it is going to be the vocal. And that's something that I noticed when I listened to Little Baby's vocals. I noticed that his vocal was a bright rap vocal. It was a really bright rap vocal. And there's a lot of high end in that vocal, but it's done so well and so meticulously. And I had to kind of figure out a way to kind of work around that and kind of figure out how they did it. So I'm going to keep showing you how I did this. So long story short, when it came to the Fab Filter Satin, what I did was I boosted the second half of the vocal, or 700 hertz and above. I boosted that entire frequency range, 700 hertz and above, 4 dB. I gave that whole range 4 dB of gain. And what it did was it gave me this supreme clarity. It kind of just opens the vocal up completely. And that's a little trick I like to do. I like to go to basically like 800 hertz range, and I like to do a nice boost, a shelving boost, and it kind of just opens the entire vocal up to a places that you never imagined. Now, granted, down the line, you're going to have to basically combat this and make sure that you de-ess. No problem. We'll get there. But this is how I did accomplish this sound. Okay. Let's go to the next plug. So next thing I did do was I used an MV2. There is a tutorial that I have on upward compression, very powerful. I'll leave it up here if you see it right there. Long story short, what the MV2 does is it basically has a low level side, a high level side. High level basically is your common compressor, and low level basically is the upward compressor, where it boost signals that are quieter within that audio signal. So if you feel like there's a few nuances in that vocal that aren't there that you want to bring out, this thing will find kind of those low level nuances and bring them up. It also will bring up some of the noise floor. So be very careful when you're using this type of upward compression. So this is what it sounded like before and after. Check it out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So for me, there's a little bit of a low sound that it kind of brings. This was a very nuanced thing. Barely, I know a lot of you may have heard it and said maybe a more trained ear would hear the difference. I personally hear the difference, but it's a very small thing that I put there just to bring out some of those nuances in a vocal that I wanted. And I like the sound of what it gave me, so I left it there. Next thing that I'm going to roll on over to is this right here. It's this EQ. So long story short, within Lil Baby's vocal, when I heard it, I noticed that there seemed to be like this really big boost in presence in the low mid range. I'm gonna bypass this back and forth, let you get an idea what it sounds like. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So you can hear that there's a little bit of bump in that body, and that's what low mid frequencies will do for you. When it comes to the body of the vocal, it really can, you can really get a great effect from the low mids, from boosting that low mid frequency range. And I liked it within the mix, and I compared it to Lil Baby's, and that's what I felt was the frequency ranges that I was kind of missing compared to his. So check this out. I'll play it within the context of the music. Here we go. I'll bypass it back and forth. Check it out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So it actually sounds kind of punier without it. Now that we've added that low mid frequencies to it, it actually gives it a nice body where it kind of feels a lot more stronger and more confident in the beat. I know that sounds crazy, but it does sound more confident on the beat. Cool. Next thing we're going to move on over to is some secret sauce now. So next thing I used was something called the one knob brighter. I love the one knob brighter because guess what it does? It's one knob and it makes it brighter. I'm not even going to go in depth to what this thing basically does because it's so self-explanatory. You crank this knob and it'll get brighter. I'll leave a description for this particular plugin below as well. It's a Waves plugin. It's called One Knob Brighter. So I basically boosted it about 2.5 within itself. It makes the vocal brighter, but I feel like it also adds a little bit of de-essing and compression to compensate for it, but it adds brightness in a very special way. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
It just has a brightness that just feels a little bit more tame. Granted, we have a lot of brightness that we've been adding, but it feels like this brightness that I added just is a little bit more tame than the one previous to it. And that's why I like this one knob brighter, because it's so simple to use. It's one knob, you boost it, you get brightness straight up. So I liked it for this because Lil Baby's vocals was extremely bright and I needed to get more out of mine. And I had to really go into a bag of how can I do this without using just EQs? And that was another way I actually gained that result. Okay, next thing is some super secret sauce that I was deciding not to show you guys, but I'll show you guys because I kind of like y'all. So long story short, this is the Smack Attack. And what the Smack Attack is a transient shaper. And what the transient shaper does is it basically has a very cool way of taking your transients and boosting them or lowering or letting you shape them in all kinds of cool ways. So I usually use this for kicks, but I've recently been using it on vocals and I've been loving the results. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So what it does is it first of all, it makes those transients really cut through the mix. It just feels a lot more aggressive and meaner. And that was something that I compared to Lil Baby's, and his was bright but aggressive and mean. So I wanted some aggression. And this transient shaper, this Smack Attack really helped me accomplish that. It kind of gives some more dynamics back into your vocal in a sense of, when I say dynamics, the difference between the quieter and louder sounds. It takes that transient and it kind of boosts it while kind of maintaining somewhat of the same balance that you had previous to it. So this is an extremely powerful trick to put on your actual vocals. Put a transient shaper like Smack Attack to really bring out those transients in your vocals. It's really, really sick plugin. I love to use that on vocals now. Next thing I did, almost there, was I used another compressor. And what I used this compressor for was I just wanted to tame some of the stuff that I did, especially after that Smack Attack really brought out some of those transients. I was like, let me bring those transients down just a little bit, or just basically get a little bit more control of my vocals so it can fit in the music a little better. So check this out. Let's play this solo. I'll let you listen to it with and without.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So it gave me a little bit more control. It gave me a little bit of a bump. Now I know what you're saying. Boy, that is compressed. Well, guess what? A lot of these hip hop vocals are very compressed. They're actually over compressed. It is somewhat of a sound in modern music. You do hear a lot of these vocals and they sound slightly over compressed. Now, granted, that is stylistic. There is no right or wrong way. You're trying to accomplish a sound. And so what I did was, with this compressor was, I just wanted to control those peaks just a little bit more, and that's exactly what I did. Now, granted, when it comes to the CLA 3A, it has a fast attack and a fast release, if I'm not mistaken, as far as what it's set, because obviously you just see two knobs. It's more of a peak limiter, and that's basically what I like to use on the vocal, is just to control those peaks and those pieces as far as the transient is concerned, because I think it has a very fast attack and a fast release. So it really just catches those peaks, lets it go, catches those peaks, lets it go. Old school type of compressor. Love this one for controlling my vocal. Okay, last but most certainly not least, probably the most important thing, is I use one more de-esser. And what I use this de-esser for is really for what you think and what you're imagining. The top end that we boosted to death. Check this out. Let's hear this within the context of the music.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
So you hear it really got control over those S's. It made those S's and T's a lot more tolerable to your ear. And that's why I said, yes, we're boosting, but we're going to combat that later and make sure it's tame. So that's exactly what it did. At the very end, I used this de-esser to really control it. And I used the de-esser at the 11,000 hertz range, took out a bunch of it so that it was a lot more controlled, and that's the result that you got. Now, granted, I used a bunch of bells and whistles as far as the reverbs and the delays and stuff like that, and so it gives me this vocal. Because I know what you're saying, when you listen to the vocal, it felt like it was a little bit above the beat, but when you put these effects on, as far as putting it into a space with the reverb and plate verb and all that other stuff, it really puts the vocal in a nice space where it kind of lives with the music. Check this out.
My mama been told me don't get no poor performance. Whatever you gon' do, just do it. Never thought about doing music. I was just trying to build my phone up, contacting the drug abusers. Run around with that Mexican, trying to figure out my cousin doing. Prison with the amigos, find out they were selling bricks.
And now we have a vocal that is bright, that has space, that is comparable and sounds in a place like Little Baby, a Little Baby type vocal. And it's really fun because you can literally have this exact sound right out the gate. If you follow along, if you download the template, and you can take the template and you can reverse engineer it, suit it to your own needs. If there's something that you feel like you want to change, absolutely try it. But at least you got something in front of your face that you can physically see, that you can experiment with and see how you can tailor it to your own sound. So I hope that this tutorial was very helpful. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe. Make sure you also know that you can download this template below in my description at helpmedevon.info. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure you follow us at helpmedevon on the Instagram. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, make sure you email me at helpmedevon@gmail.com. And if you have any comments, please let me know what else you want to see next. Leave it down in the comments below. Let me know what's going on. And until next time, you guys.